sweet J, a little aloha in our day. Spread a little aloha around the world at breakfast with Bob.
Thank you, Poncho Man. Welcome back, everybody. Breakfast with Bob, or not quite Kona edition. My name is Bob Babbitt. We are brought to you by Master Spas. As fuels go longer, Hoka Let's Fly, DeBoer Wetsuits, Premium Plus Sports, and of course, our Challenged Athletes Foundation. Our next guest, I was stalking him this last weekend as he was doing a training run around Mission Bay. 4-time Alcatraz champion, 2-time Oceanside champion, 2-time 70.3 World Championship silver medalist, 2016 Olympian, a triathlete since the age of 8. The great Ben Kanute joins us. Benny, how you doing?
Doing great, Bob. Thanks for having me on.
It was fun. I'm leaving Fiesta Island. I'm like, I see people running along the bay there often, and you were flying. I'm like, that's freaking Ben. I drive up ahead, and I was like, oh, and he's with Jim Vance. What was that workout?
Yeah, so I came down because I'm here in Oceanside, so up north just a bit from Fiesta Island, doing just like a 2-week block or so leading into the T100 San Francisco race, basically the new Escape from Alcatraz. And it just kind of fell where we were doing our long kind of race pace tempo run efforts out there. So we were doing 10 by 30 seconds hill repeats, and then we were on maybe the second or third interval by the time we passed you. So it was 8 by 8 minutes. The odds were all, kind of varying pace. So like kind of tempo, then going faster than race pace. So kind of some speed changes in there. And then all the evens were just nice and steady, kind of right at that race pace, or maybe bring it down a little bit faster as he got out. But yeah, fatigue level is high, but workout's still kind of churning out.
It's funny because you've been doing, like I said, you've been doing this since the age of 8, and you've been with the same coach forever and ever and ever. Does it get to a point where you feel like, oh my God, this is like, here's another workout. I've done this a million times. You seem like you still love it all. But I'm sure there's days where you're going, oh my God, maybe I could get a desk job somewhere.
Over the past year, Challenge Roth was really like my last good race. I had some solid races kind of in between, but after Challenge Roth, it's been quite a grind, I'd say. Just, after that, we just had to sort out kind of a lot of family stuff that was going on kind of through the summer, and stayed in Phoenix, and just probably a lot of different stressors there. So my August was pretty dismal. Just went to those 3 races, the 2 PTO ones, the World Champs for half Ironman, and didn't really put a performance together. Reset, had a little bit of a racecation with the Malibu Super League try, had Indian Wells to kind of check fitness, but had some stuff, maybe not go all my way there and wasn't quite fit. And then the first 2 races this year. So I think through periods in my career, there are times like this where it was just a grind and was trying to figure stuff out. And back kind of early February, mid-February, before that Miami race, had some SI issues that were just didn't at the time just seemed like normal soreness, but looking back probably, was a bit out of whack overall. And we've definitely addressed those. So now I'm like, I don't want a desk job. Like everything's flowing. Workouts are going well. I'm excited. Summer's here, race season is in full swing, and kind of looking at this San Francisco race as the first race of the season almost, because the first couple races, like I said, it's just, I had to grind it out, had to really work hard to put myself in a good space like before those races, and felt like I was, but just, my body wasn't really working with me. And that's always difficult when your body and mind are kind of in 2 different places.
Yeah, I mean, so far, I don't think we haven't seen the real Ben Kanute at any of these PTO things, right? The U.S. Open last year was what, 23rd?
No,
Open this year,
maybe
Singapore. You
could say Ibiza, maybe my Ibiza race,
yes.
But that was 8th, so it was solid. But I think now it's just kind of how the timing of the season goes, right? Because I like to take an approach of building into the season too, and that can put you on your back foot in these T100 races when everybody, it's a world championship every month essentially.
Yes.
And I was maybe not at full fitness, and then throw in a couple of those maybe other issues that were going on, like the SI thing, and all of a sudden, a mediocre race turns into, a throwaway race or something like that. So, but definitely some good learning experiences, got to be able to build off of those. And now I'm in this swing of things where, yeah, just the workouts are flowing, and having a great time.
Well, and the fun part is a race you've won 4 times, Escape from Alcatraz,
Mm-hmm.
is now the venue for the next T100, and it's next weekend. And a lot of these guys, in a lot of races that people do, it's the swims are sort of cookie cutter.
Yeah.
Alcatraz, man, you make a mistake out there, you end up in freaking Oregon.
That's yeah, you end up out in the Pacific Ocean. You don't want to be swept under the bridge. So I think, yeah, I think this swim is probably one of the most technical, and you could say that on paper it looks relatively straightforward because it's just, oh, it's a harbor swim, kind of a bay. It might be choppy. We know it's going to be cold, and I'll just get through it. But I mean, I've been there and we've swam 18 minutes for the swim, 18-20, and I've been there and we swam 30-32 minutes. So I think that the swim is going to be abnormal in the fact where maybe the gaps will be, really small and not normal. Like everybody will be somewhat close together, maybe because of crazy currents like a Chattanooga swim. Or you're going to see something where gaps are just absolutely exploded and it's carnage and people are all over the bay coming out maybe double the gap of what they actually usually come out in, just because it's such an isolating swim jumping off a boat. There's no chance to necessarily hop on people's feet. It's like you're in right into the waves.
Well, and I was interviewing Alistair Brownlee this morning, and everybody's like, okay, or Magnus the other day. It's like, I need to find Ben Kanute's feet. This isn't the type of race where you can actually find somebody's feet, because you're right. You're jumping off a boat. It's a different gig.
It's really disorienting. And I just remember now, usually the Escape from Alcatraz fields were about half the size when we would jump off the boat. But we had all the women on there too. So it's about 20 to 30 athletes all jumping off the boat at the same time. And I remember you can kind of see people like somewhat near you, but it's, usually in a harbor or anywhere, even if you're diving off a dock, the waves are relatively mellow because there's boats around. But when you're out in the middle, it's like there's troughs in between the waves. And if you're in the bottom of one and somebody else is in the bottom, they're only a few feet away from you, but you can't see them at all. And that's where I think it becomes so disorienting, because you jump off, you dive in, and you look up, and you might see a few people around, but you better hope that they're within like your range a little bit, because otherwise people just, you get lost in the chaos of the water a little.
Well, and it's not like, oh, I'll just sight on the buoys.
No,
There's nothing out there.
Yeah, no, they've had a buoy boat, but that one doesn't always go the right direction, the direction at least that you want to go. And yeah, you have to kind of feel it out, because I mean, it could be super foggy and have a marine layer and you might not be able to see the buildings, or you'll see the buildings and you'll know exactly where you are. So it's definitely one of those where you kind of just have to go out, trust your gut, and just, it's playing the hand that you're dealt and just hoping that it's better than everybody else's.
So the goal this year, primarily Kona, Ironman World Championship?
Yeah, that's the main goal. And that's where the first couple races of the season, I think have been really good. And they were both pretty warm, especially Singapore. And also just, in pushing training and the strength along with it, with the SI being out of whack, we're getting out all of these weird little happenstances, niggles, whatever you want to call them, where once we go and do the final build toward Kona, we've tested everything we want to test going into that race. There's going to be no surprises, and we'll be able to fully focus on it, because I've got this race. There might be a couple halves thrown in, but then basically the London T100 race as well. And that gives us, almost 12 to 16 weeks, I think, to fully prep and mainly focus on Kona.
Love it. And when you talk about you mentioned Challenge Roth, that was such a great race for you, getting third there, 46-minute swim, 4:10 bike, 2:37 marathon, 7:37. If you say those times to most people for most races, you're winning, right?
Yeah.
You had Magnus and Patrick there, but it was, you got guys going sub 4 hours for that bike ride with Magnus and
Mm-hmm.
Sam. Uh, that race, was it everything you wanted it to be?
Um, well, I mean, I think the race itself, like I can't say enough good things about the town of Roth, the race itself, just the spectators. I think that's to me, I think that race and Escape from Alcatraz, just because it's such a unique type of race. Like you're not going to get that experience anywhere else, but that's such an isolating race where you're out there on your own. There's really no crowds. It's kind of like an inward type of race where you're just focused on you versus the course and the elements versus Roth is such a community event and there's hundreds of thousands of people and that first time up Solar Hill is unlike anything in the sport. And you hear people say it all the time, but like, I think I had a smile on my face the entire way. It was an absolutely insane experience. I think, the race itself wasn't perfect. I think the bike, there could have been some things that, maybe we saved a few minutes here or there, or the run. Yeah, there's always a little bit that you pick apart and you're like, okay, well, what could I have done to go a little faster? So that's, I think, what we're taking from that race into Kona, because that was only my second full. And this year, I mean, Kona will be my third full. But I think that's also kind of an advantage because we put so much focus and effort into each full distance race that there's no throwaway full distance. It's not we'll go out and we'll kind of be conservative and see what happens. It's, hey, this is, you're qualifying for Kona at Arizona, or you're going to Roth and you're trying to win the thing and take some chances and race smart, but also, test yourself and see what you're capable of with the training that we've done.
So with Kona, obviously you're a kid who grew up in this sport, and that's the holy grail. That is the one. If you want to win one race besides the Olympics, it's the Ironman World Championship in Kona, Hawaii. And will you do a block over in Kona leading into the race?
We'll do a training camp. It's kind of to be determined how long, but not more than a couple weeks, kind of far enough out from the race where if we, do some tests out there, if we do some big workouts, we're not going to dig too much of a hole that we can't get out of by going back home and recovering. And then we'll go out and we'll kind of split the difference, not go out last minute, but we'll go out 2 weeks before the race just to get a feel for the island, get that heat acclimation kind of finished up and do like the final taper on the big island just to be fully prepped, soak in all that energy and just kind of enjoy that ride. Cause like you said, it's the one race that I'd really like to win right now in my career.
Well, and when you look at these early season races, Singapore, Miami, we're talking so early in the season for a season that's, Ironman is late this year. It's October 26th. So it's from your perspective, you go, okay, keep your eye on the prize. I'm doing these races. It's important to do T100. It's important to be successful. But the real deal is for us is Kona. Is it hard not to beat yourself up too much when these races don't go according to plan?
Well, I think that I've always started my season strong. So not being able to at least go out and, if I tell my body, like, let's go hard, to at least get the feeling of going hard, where, Miami pretty early in the bike, I shut down just, I think mechanically just was, super tight between the back and the hips and just wasn't able. I was just, we just call it like I was very disconnected from my bike. And when you're dealing with, kind of the back, it's just your SIs where all of the kind of torque comes from when you're pushing anything, especially through your legs. And to have that kind of off, I just wasn't connecting with the pedals, with the power that I was putting out, kind of a month or so before that. So it was just kind of hard to cross the finish line and be like, I push better power on easy rides sometimes, or like zone 2 rides than I did in that race. And Singapore was another learning experience where such extreme heat has always been something that I've been working on. But I think that it was important to expose me to that because Kona, gets pretty warm. Like it's not a cold race by any means. So I would say there's parts that are frustrating to not get the results, but I'm always learning, and that's always the goal in every race and every opportunity I get, is to continue to learn and be able to grow from those. So it has been kind of it's super early season. I tend to peak and like to peak later in the year and kind of build throughout the season. So, and build that momentum. So, um, yeah, I think that it's always a bit difficult to not get the results, but definitely have, the goals at the end of the year that are primary, and there's still plenty of time until we're getting to the big island.
So what's always impressed me with you is obviously the fact that you are never afraid of the moment. You're never afraid to go to the front. And we saw that, in your two Ironman World Championship silver medals. You weren't afraid of taking on Javier Gomez and that whole group when you got second at Chattanooga, or Christian Blumenfeld in St. George. Was that something you developed early? That, hey, listen, I'm going here to win the race, and I'm not afraid to put my nose in it and just see what happens. Because so I might get. I remember at Chicago one year, that was the Worlds, and you got passed by a ton of people, but you were the first guy out there. You can't win a race until you get a feel for how to lead.
Right. And I think that's always kind of how I've raced, just based on my early strengths of the swim and the bike. You kind of put yourself out front and put all your cards on the table relatively early, and then hang on for the run. And, as I've gotten older, my strengths have kind of evened out throughout the three disciplines. So I can kind of race maybe a little bit more conservatively the swim bike versus what I did when I was way younger. But I think that's, just kind of been the nature. And early on in your career, if you're going to be a professional, you have to not care about anybody's status, what they've done, anything like that, and kind of relish in the opportunity of racing whoever's the best at the moment or considered the best. Like, it was always awesome to get on the start line with Jan and test yourself against somebody who's considered the greatest of all time in our sport, or someone like Christian, who came off of an incredible 2022, like just winning everything basically, and put yourself up against him and just kind of see how you compare, because those are the type of moments that you dream about and you train for. And that's what I'm trying to do and dream of and plan for when you get to Kona and get out there, because I kind of feel like Ironman is something that I'm a little bit more suited to overall, just with strength being my strength.
So when you were going through the whole Olympic process and making the team in 2016, was the thought even back then, hey, this is great and I'm an Olympian, but my real strength is going to be longer distance?
Yeah, I always had people whispering in my ear, but my early memories of triathlon were always of watching that Ironman World Championship. That was super exciting. And I think I was just so focused on qualifying for the Olympics and becoming an Olympian that, you had to brush all that off to the side and just be like, down the road, down the road. And then when it happens, then you're kind of going, okay, what's next? And the big evaluation for me was, is there going to be a mixed relay in the Olympic? Like, the next step, it wasn't just going to be, okay, I don't want to just be this, every 4 years going to the Olympics, grinding it out for an Olympic cycle just to get 25th, 15th, 5th, whatever. I wanted that next step to be the medal. And realistically, I thought, okay, if I wanted to win, 29-minute 10K is the goal. Maybe I can work my way down to that, but I would have to pretty much be a runner for the next 4 to 8 years. And I was like, I just love triathlon so much and want to be a triathlete that, halves and fulls were calling me as well. And just, that was exciting. And so the change and the being able to go do that was really what pulled me in. And I think, it was always in the back of my mind. It's always been awesome to watch all of those, like the history and the battles play out in one spot in Kona. And racing over an Ironman, I think, is one of those, it's a funny thing because you have to keep your emotions in check for 7-8 hours, but it's also such an emotional event. Like you're just down to, like, you're just whittled down. And that's not to say that a sprint, Olympic, or half can't, be super hard and really challenge you physically and emotionally. But there's just something a little bit different about the almost emotional toll that I think an Ironman kind of takes on you when you're really, like, in it. Like I think I've gotten closest to like almost crying in a triathlon, like in the two fulls that I've done, just like emotional wise, just out of nowhere. And that was not even because I was sad or happy or anything. It was just in the middle of the marathon.
Yeah, you're about as raw as you'll ever get when you're in the
Yeah.
middle of that marathon, and most people are just like, okay, maybe I'll just try to finish, but you're still fighting for positions. You're still fighting to win the race. And
Yeah.
that's a different gig when you've been out there for 7 hours, and then you have to go harder than you've gone all day long.
And I think it just sneaks up on you. There's talk about, I feel as triathletes, we're a little bit like connoisseurs of pain. Like, it's like a sommelier telling the differences between wines. Like a sprint, it's like a quick, like, shank to the side, a super sprint. Like, the pain is there. It's just like, immediate. Ironman is almost the opposite. It's like you got this really long, thin pin that's slowly being inserted into you, and you don't realize that it's there until it's like poking something internal, and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm in all of this pain and everything hurts, and I don't know when this happened, but everything just kind of came in and started hurting me.
What would it mean to you to win Ironman, the World Championships?
I mean, I don't think I can even put that into words, because that's something that I've wanted to be a world champion, an individual world champion for my entire career, and I'm still chasing that at the half Ironman, chasing it now at the Ironman distance. And I think it would be super special this year. Just, haven't had some of the tough races that I've had, some of the hard training, the sacrifices that my family's made, going to have everybody there on the big island to watch, and to be the first American male in 22, 23 years since Tim DeBoom in 22. That would be absolutely incredible, just to be able to do that. So, and I think it's going to take a very special race, with just as long as the conditions play kind of how they have the past few years, and not being like super windy or super hot or anything that like really slows the race down. I think we're going to see some incredibly fast times come, like, to win it.
Now, have you spent some time training on the course already?
Not this year, not anything super recently, but I've been out there a couple times and kind of know it a little bit. But it'll be nice to get out there and get like really acquainted with it coming up later this year.
Well, and when you grow up with the sport, and Javi, the Queen Highway, and Pay and Save Hill, and all the different stuff. When you're out there doing a training block for a couple of weeks, and you're on that stuff every day, that's pretty fun.
Yeah, for sure. I know. And it's just so many times I've been watching it on TV just from way back. I mean, my dad was on the Ironman. He was on the course when Tim DeBoom won it for the first time in 2001. And I mean, that's just, a special race all in itself. So, just to be able to experience that. And I mean, winning it is just that next level of special, but I've really come to be grateful when I have the races, even like St. George, where you come up a little short, but I'm in the battle. And whenever I ask my body to go forward and keep pushing, it still responds. And that's, kind of always just a great thing, versus some of these races where if you show up and the tank is empty, or there's something not quite right and your body just kind of shuts down. That's just participating to me. And with how much I put into this sport and all the sacrifices my family makes and everything, it's just going out there and racing is what I love, and being able to push myself. So yeah, that's been, and that was the same thing in 2022, where I was sitting with you in St. George, and I was, happy and confident and ready to go. And all I wanted was to just go out there and be able to show what I was doing in training. And that's similar to now too, is just, if I could show what I'm doing in training, I feel pretty good about where I'm at and where I'm heading.
Love it. And when you look at as somebody who's been in sport again since the age of 8, was there one race early on in your career that told you, okay, I can be one of the best?
I don't know if there's one in particular. I know that back, in those early teen years, like racing with the Multisport Madness team and doing the whole junior circuit in the US, it was always us kind of versus each other, and we kind of traded off being national champion almost like every other year. And that was, I think, the first time that we kind of were believing there that we could do something in the sport. And probably maybe for my professional career, it was just that first time taking the pro card and just going out to Europe and racing and just knowing what it would take then. It was just always these little steps, you know, there's never really that huge jump from, okay, I'm racing, you know, youth and I can see myself being an Olympian. You dream that, but it always comes in these small little chunks where it's like, okay, I'm youth national champion. Let's go be junior national champion. Let's go race at Junior Elite Worlds. Let's go do a Olympic distance race. Let's, you know, just keep making those small little steps. And yeah, before you know it, that's you're racing with the big dogs, and then you are a big dog, hopefully.
You are definitely a big dog, my friend. You've done great stuff. I'm excited to see you next week. I can't wait to see that Alcatraz race, because I think there's gonna be a lot of people that they've read about it, they've seen videos of it, but jumping off that boat is a different gig. When they hit that water, you're not thinking about winning at that point. You're thinking about, oh my God, am I going to find my way to shore?
Yeah. And I don't know if they've officially released the course yet, so I don't know how much I can speak to it, but it's definitely overall, particularly, you know, the swim and the bike that are really in the spirit of Alcatraz. A lot of climbing, and those hills, you know, on paper don't always look that bad, but they're no joke once you're out there on the course and riding through it. So that's it's going to be definitely, I think, a race where there's a lot of carnage.
When it's a unique course like Island House, like St. George, like Oceanside, obviously Alcatraz, that's where Ben Kanute shines, right? You like those courses that have, you know, there's quicksand over here, and then there's barbed wire over here. The more intriguing the course is, the better you do.
Yeah, I think so. I like a good challenge, and I like some adverse conditions. You know, St. George was also super cold. I think Alcatraz is always pretty cold. So yeah, it's just it's some of those races. So definitely, and when everything tends to click and come together in the training block, that's when, you know, we'll take on any course. Then just give me the competition and let's race.
Love it. Benny, thanks so much for taking so much time. It's always such a treat to catch up with you. And the kids are good?
Yeah, everybody's doing well. So, I mean, just before this, we were out on a family run. Just, you know, we're enjoying, you guys, you know, May gray, June gloom. It's a little cloudy, but coming from Arizona, that's a treat, having the gloomy, nice and cool weather like here in San Francisco versus 110 degrees by, you know, noon.
I was talking to Alistair Brownlee this morning, and he was like, I finished my training ride here this morning and looked at the temperature here in San Francisco, and it was the same. And I was like, this is Leeds type of weather. This is all the guys who really do well in the heat. They're fine, but people who don't handle a cold are going to have issues here.
Yeah, and that's where I like the T100 series, just shifting it up and mixing up different courses and different conditions, especially when, you know, over the winter, heat prep training for me, I feel like to take on the heat and humidity in particular, I really have to be peak level, peak fitness. Everything has to be super dialed. And it's just, I think, never quite there for me early March, April for being that dialed to have a championship level performance in those kind of extreme conditions, just because I build into the season. So this is always a good time of year for me, though.
Love it. Benny, we'll see you next weekend, man. Have a great one.
Yeah, I might see you out down around Fiesta again at some point. So
I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you to our guest, everybody. Again, Breakfast with Bob, our Not Quite Kona edition. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We'll catch you next time. Thank you, Benny.
Thank you.